Have you ever looked at your neighbor and wondered what secrets they might be hiding? The people living next door, across the street, or even just down the hall, they seem normal, don't they? But sometimes behind closed doors, there's something darker lurking.
It all started when Sarah moved into her new apartment. It was a quiet building, just a few units, and her neighbor across the hall was an older man named Mr. Grayson. He kept to himself, always polite, but distant. Sarah thought nothing of it until the noises began. Late at night, she'd hear faint thuds coming from his apartment. At first, she brushed it off as pipes or the building settling, but then she started noticing other things. The smell, a faint, metallic odor that seeped under her door, and the way Mr. Grayson would stare at her in the hallway, his eyes cold and unblinking. One night, the thuds grew louder, more frantic. Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She crept to his door and pressed her ear against it. That's when she heard it. A muffled scream. Her blood ran cold. She called the police, but by the time they arrived, Mr. Grayson was gone. And when they searched his apartment, they found something in the basement, something Sarah wishes she could forget. To this day, she doesn't know what happened to Mr. Grayson or what he left behind.
Jake thought he'd found the perfect cabin for a weekend getaway. Nestled deep in the woods, it was peaceful, secluded, just what he needed. But on his first night, he noticed something strange. His neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Harlow, lived in a cabin about a mile away. She seemed friendly at first, bringing him a pie and warning him about the wildlife. But then Jake started seeing her everywhere. He'd catch her standing at the edge of the woods, just watching him. At night, he'd hear footsteps circling the cabin, and when he looked out the window, there she was, her face pale in the moonlight. One evening, Jake decided to confront her. He walked to her cabin, but when he knocked, there was no answer. The door creaked open, and inside he found nothing. The cabin was empty, abandoned for years. Jake left that night and never went back. But sometimes he wonders, who or what was really watching him?
Moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood, eager to start a family. Their neighbors, the Millers, seemed like the perfect family, friendly, outgoing, always hosting barbecues. But there was something off about them. Emily noticed it in the way they'd stare at her, their smiles just a little too wide. And then there were the children. They never spoke, just watched from the shadows, their eyes hollow and unnerving. One night, Emily's dog started barking uncontrollably. She looked out the window and saw the Millers standing in her yard, their faces expressionless. She called the police, but when they arrived, the Millers were gone. The next morning, Emily found a note on her doorstep. It read, "We've been waiting for you." Emily and her husband moved out that week, but sometimes she wonders, did they leave soon enough?
These stories remind us that sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we should fear the most. So the next time you hear a strange noise or catch your neighbor's gaze lingering a little too long, maybe it's time to start asking questions. Because behind every closed door, there could be a secret waiting to be uncovered. And some secrets are better left buried. Sleep tight.